Welcome to week 6 of a 2023 A Brighter Me project brought to you by Illuma Ketamine Clinic in Austin, Texas. I am Allie Waddell, the CEO and co-founder of Illuma, and we are 6 weeks into our 8-week journey to help you shine brighter this year. Each week I've been sharing with you a Brighter Me building block. These are my favorite tools and exercises from my last 2 decades as a life coach. They're going to help you to understand yourself on a deeper level and then really make sure that you're shining throughout the year. So if you haven't had a chance to watch the 5 previous videos, I strongly suggest doing that, but you can watch these in any order that you'd like. And I'm so excited to dive into building block 6. Our building block this week is called fear triggering. What it's going to allow us to do is understand what our natural or programmed responses have been to fear or stress. Be aware and bring awareness to those, number one, and then start to change and replace those responses. And as we know, all we need to do to become the best new version of ourselves is just change how we are in those small actions every day. And so this is an amazing tool in the toolbox for you. I actually took this from one of my favorite coaches named Mel Robbins. You might have heard she has something called the 5-second rule, which is also a really cool, helpful tool. So if you haven't had a chance to check out Mel Robbins, her books, her podcasts, her social media, I strongly suggest, if you're deep into self-work, that you follow her because she has some really great content to dive into. So we're gonna dive into this. We've broken it down into 3 steps, and I'm going to go through those with you one by one. Remember, the worksheet for you to work through this on yourself is always included in the description below, so make sure you have that pulled out while we're going through this as well. So step 1 is going to sound very similar to a lot of our other step 1s. It is awareness. So the first thing we really need to do is understand what we're scared of. What are our real fears? What is at the core of why you are or aren't doing certain things? What comes up? It could be a fear of failure. It could be a fear of success. That's actually a big, interesting one of mine. It could be a fear of being seen. It could be a fear of not being seen. So there's all kinds of different things that could come up. It could be a fear of being too big for your britches. That's a big one in the South. But so the first question you're going to ask, and I've included some bullets so you can write down, list them out. Figure out what your top 3 to 5 fears are. Like, what is that overrunning fear that's preventing you from being the best version of yourself or living the best life you can and shining your brightest? So that's what I want you to write down. What are you the most afraid of? So number 1, awareness. Part B of that awareness is really unpacking what is the core fundamental wound or trauma that occurred to create this fear response. Almost all fear responses come from some core wounding that you've had, typically when you're younger, but it could be when you're older. And so the next thing I want you to do is take your fears, put them on the next section, and write down when is the first time that you actively remembered feeling that fear. Because we really, in all the work we're doing in the clinic, out of the clinic, what we're really trying to do is get to the root. Because just putting a Band-Aid on things, just dealing with kind of what's happening externally will not lead to lasting change. We really need to uproot and dig into those core feelings to understand what's happening. And so write down. Again, I think it's super helpful to kind of journal this out right now, but if you want to start with bullet points, that's fine, and maybe save some time later to journal in. but really start to unpack those memories of when did you first initially start feeling those fears. So that's the first step. Awareness, understanding, and writing down what your fears are. And then part B is unpacking when did those fears first start to happen. Okay, step 2 of this process. You need to understand what is your natural or programmed response to when fear, nervousness, or stress occurs. What happens? Because I'll tell you, for 99% of people, it's almost the exact same thing every time. It might be slightly different depending on the fear that's getting triggered, but for a certain fear, it typically is the same. And in general, people have a tendency to respond to fears in a general way. So I'm gonna give you an example for me, and I've touched on this in previous videos, is I'm a numb out girl. So anytime something feels stressful, fearful, anxiety provoking, I wanna numb. I wanna numb with food, I wanna hide, I wanna tell everybody I'm okay, I wanna lie. I wanna really kind of retreat back into myself and not address what's coming up. I don't wanna feel those emotions. And so my typical response is numbing or disappearing. And so I've even convinced myself, and maybe you can relate to this, is I've even then told myself a story that that's me relaxing. Or I deserve that because I work so hard. And there is a part of relaxing that's true. And there is a part of like you've worked and you get some time off. That's also true. But many times I need to bring awareness to, am I really relaxing right now? And that's what's happening? Or am I really avoiding what I don't want to feel or what I don't want to do because I'm scared about something? So bringing some awareness to that. So again, take those fears that you did in part 1 and now bring them down and really think about when was the last time I felt this and what is my tendency of response, and start to just list those out. So that's the second step, is to really understand what is your current response to fear right now. So step 3, all we're gonna do is write down we've just written down what our current pattern is, and we're gonna write down what a healthy or improved alternative would be for us to try or to test. A lot of times I find it easier to gamify this. Listen, we're just gonna try these on and see if they work. You might have to go through 3 new patterns to feel the one that really does help the way that your unhealthy coping did. Because guess what? Those neurons for your unhealthy coping are like grooved into your brain and grooved into your soul. So it's gonna be hard at first to work yourself into a new pattern. That is why ketamine is so helpful. It creates that neuroplasticity so we can break these patterns easily and form new neural pathways. That's why psychedelics are such an amazing tool in our toolbox, especially when we're doing personal growth work. That's why doing these lessons while you're going through ketamine or soon after can be so insanely helpful, because all of this stuff will feel a lot easier when your neuroplasticity is just so turned on and enlightened. And so I'm gonna read you some examples, but there's plenty of examples on the worksheet, and all you're gonna do, again, take your old pattern and rewrite a new pattern. But here I'm gonna just tell you a few, and I'm gonna look down at my computer so I can read them. So my old pattern would be, fear triggers me to be silent. And my new pattern is, I will ask for help or speak up. And that's actually something I currently am working on with my therapist. And it's actually going very well. I've actually done like insanely better than doing my go it alone, stress yourself, cry in private situation. That has been my pattern most of my life. The second one is, when I'm nervous, I will overthink. So I can get stuck in my head a lot. A lot of us tend to be ruminators. Hooray for that. So we get stuck thinking and thinking and thinking and thinking. What's helpful for me is to get into action. And how that starts for me is to create a list, because I very quickly get overwhelmed. But if I create a list of like and start to prioritize, I automatically will shift myself out of stress and out of fear. Fear makes me isolate. Again, this kind of ties into one, which is I will reach out to friends. Through the last few months of stressful times, I've been very mindful of making sure that I'm talking to people, which is something really new for me. I'm really trying to talk to people and bring people in so I feel less alone. And then fear makes me overwhelmed. One thing that, again, getting into action is work on a critical item. And I put a time limit on it. I put 5 minutes, and just that 5 minutes, likelihood is I'll do far more than 5 minutes. But if I feel overwhelmed, I typically go for a walk for at least 20 to 30 minutes and then come back in and try to knock out one part of something big, because again, it's putting me into action, and I find that really motivating and really relieving of stress and fear. When I'm nervous or bored, I stress eat. And instead of that, I go for a walk. Walking has turned into a really amazing self-care item for me. So I won't go through all of these. There's a number more, but I think you kind of get the idea. So you're going to find your old pattern, find your new pattern, and then guess what? Try them on. And guess what? They might not all work. They might not all be right. You're not going to do them 100% of the time. Your old pattern will be like, hey, don't forget about me. Let's do it together. Yeah, just acknowledge that and try to move as much as you can into the new pattern. I'm just telling you, again, remember what we worked on in the beginning. The only difference between you and this version of you that you envision is this small daily changes and actions. And you have the ability to do those each and every day. So remember, it's not going to be perfect. It doesn't need to be. You just keep going and start again. You try again. You're building your toolbox. You're learning a little bit more about yourself each and every day. And hopefully these will help. So that's week 6. I hope the fear triggering building block was really helpful for y'all. Again, if you haven't had a chance to watch the other videos, please do that. Please subscribe so you'll get alerts when these come out. Our goal is to put these together with videos into a packet so that everybody has access to them. And hopefully they've been really helpful for you. Remember, you can find the worksheet in the description below, link out. And then if you have any feedback for me, my email is also in there. Feel free to email me at any time with feedback or thoughts or other content that you would like to see from me. If you find this helpful, I would love to hear from y'all. But I appreciate you joining us on this journey, and we will see you next week for week number 7.